Story *1**. My cousin Aiden had just finished building a cabin way out in the Appalachian Mountains, somewhere in western North Carolina, about from the nearest speck on the map. Even calling it a town felt generous. It had a post office, a gas station, with one pump, and a diner that closed that was about it. No cell reception past Easterton Point. No power lines once you left the highway. And definitely no iffy, just forest. Nothing but trees and hills in every direction. Eden had gone through a messy divorce the year before, and he sort of snapped in a quiet way. One day, he just announced he was done with cities, with traffic, with bills, with people. Said he wanted to live close to the bone. That was their kind. A thing he said when he'd made up his mind. He bought a patch of forest, taught himself to build with his hands, and vanished for months. The next I heard, he put up a cabin himself, off-grid, solar-powered, wood-heated, the whole thing. When it was done, he offered it to me for a week. Said he'd be out of state for work and figured I could use the time to write or clear my head. I hadn't told him I needed to clear anything, but I guess it showed. He made the drive on a Tuesday morning. It was a clear day, not hot. And that kind of quiet that starts pressing on your ears the farther you get from people. The road narrowed gradually. Asphalt gave way to gravel. Gravel turned into dirt. Eventually, I found myself crawling along the Rotterdam Trail barely wide enough for my car, at Easterton Point. I gave up, parked in a grassy clearing, and hiked the rest of the way, a duffel over one shoulder, a cooler banging against my leg. The cabin was tucked into the hillside like it was hiding. The front porch looked out over a steep drop into a hollow thick with trees. The back was so close to the slope you could reach out a window and touch the undergrowth. It wasn't big, but it looked solid. Hand-cut siding, a deep porch with 2 chairs. A big iron stove smack in the middle of the main room. Inside was quiet, not peaceful quiet, just quiet. That weird pressing silence that settles in when there's no hum of electricity. No fridge, no AC, no Wi-Fi router clicking. Just air and wood and your own breathing. Eden had left a note on the counter scribbled in Sharpie on a folded piece of notebook paper. Drive trail behind the fire pit. It leads to a stream. No one out here but deer and ghosts. Enjoy the quiet. That weighs it. I stood there for a second, holding the note, listening to the silence. The first day passed slowly. I didn't even open my laptop. My brain was too loud at first, like it was trying to fill the silence with every thought I'd been pushing down. Eventually, I gave up trying to be productive and just wondered. Built a fire in the stove, made pouch chili, Saturday on the porch with a blanket round my shoulders and watched the trees shift from green to black as night fell. I went to bed early just to escape the quiet. By the second day, my body had caught up with my brain. I slept late, probably the first deep sleep I'd had in months, and didn't feel guilty about it. Made coffee on the little propane burner Eden had left, curled up on the floor by the stove. Read for hours. It felt like time moves slow up there, like the clock was just a suggestion. By the time the sun started dipping, I was itching to move. I threw on my jacket and stepped outside. The air had that crisp, piney bite to it, clean in a way you only notice when you've lived too long, surrounded by traffic and air conditioning. The trail behind the fire pit wasn't obvious unless you were looking for it. It started as a soft dip in the brush, just a slightly darker path where the undergrowth had been walked down. No markers, no signs, no blaze marks on trees, just that gentle curve disappearing into the woods. I figured I'd follow it for a bit, see the stream, then loop. Back before it got to dark, the farther I walked, the quieter it got, and not just from going deeper into the woods. It was like the trees themselves were swallowing the sound. Even my footsteps felt muffled after a while. The trail narrowed until I had to duck under low-hanging branches and step over broken limbs, some of which looked freshly fallen. That's when I saw them, two men maybe feet off to my left, just standing in a shallow dip in the brush. They weren't moving, their backs slightly hunched, heads tilted forward from a distance. It looked like they were staring at something on the ground, except they weren't moving at all. He stopped and just stared. No orange vests, no gear, definitely not hunters. They didn't look like campers either. No backpacks, no water bottles, just standing there completely still. Heads angled toward the dirt. I kept moving, casual, steady, not fast, not sneaky. Eyes on the trail. Walk. I glanced back once. They hadn't moved an inch. I told myself they were locals or hikers or just some guys doing something weird I didn't want to know about. Maybe they were tripping. Maybe they didn't see me. The brain will do whatever it can to make something strange feel normal. The trail kept going. I expected it to loop after a while, curve back toward the cabin. But it didn't. It just went deeper, narrower, darker, trees growing denser until the light barely trickled through. I'd gone too far. That's when he heard the scream. It sliced through, the words like it didn't care about direction or origin. Shrill and low at the same time, like a siren underwater. It didn't sound human, but it didn't sound like any animal either. The closest I can describe is this warped metallic noise like a speaker tearing its sulfur pot. I stopped. My heart pounded. I turned slowly and they were in the trail behind me now. Closer. Maybe hefty. Same posture. Same dead stillness. I couldn't see their faces. But I knew they were looking at me. I could feel it. The scream hadn't come from them. I knew that it had come from everywhere, from the trees, the dirt, the air. We stared at each other, or at least I stared at them for what felt like a long time. Then, at the exact moment, they both stepped backward into the woods, not turning, just moving straight back like they were on invisible tracks. And then they were gone. No sound, no crack of a twig, just gone. I didn't run, but I walked fast. The trail suddenly felt different, longer, tighter, like the woods were leaning in round me. Every shadow looked like it could hold a face. Every turn felt like a trap. I kept expecting them to reappear. Maybe closer this time. They didn't. When the cabin came into view, I nearly lost it. Slammed the door shut. Locked it. Stood in the middle of the room just listening. Nothing. I didn't call Aiden. Didn't even think about it. What would I say? Hey, some guys in the woods moved weird. I threw more wood into the stove. Made tea. Told myself it was just locals messing round. A prank. A coincidence. That scream, though, that stayed in my bones. About minutes passed. I started to relax, picked up my book again, got a few pages in. Almost convinced myself I'd imagined most of it. Then it came again. That same scream, distant this time, but unmistakable, like something enormous twisting inside the trees. I stood up, walked to the back window, peeked out nothing but black trees. The trail swallowed in shadow. I let the curtain fall. Tried to search online every combo I could think of. Appalachian scream, weird animal sounds, forest siren noise. I listened to clips of mountain lions, owls, coyotes, all of them wrong. Too high-pitched, too familiar. Then came footsteps, heavy, slow, deliberate, boards creaking under boots. They stopped right outside the front door. I didn't move. Then a knock. Soft, careful. I stood frozen. Then another knock. Slower, heavier. Like whoever was out there wanted me to know they weren't in a hurry. I edged toward the door. Leaned in. Looked through the peephole. 2 figures. Same size. Same build. Now wearing plastic animal masks. Crude one-sheep Halloween junk. One shaped like a deer. The other something rounder. A rabbit maybe. White elastic bands stretched across the backs of their heads. Hoods up. They didn't move. I backed away. Looked at my phone. Still no signal. Grabbed the iron poker from beside the stove and crouched behind the couch. Then something hit the door hard dot just once. A deep splintering sound that echoed through the floor. Then silence. I stayed frozen. Listening, eventually. The footsteps started again. Retreating. When I did, to peek, they were walking back into the woods. Slowly. Calmly. Disappearing down the trail like it belonged to them. I didn't sleep that night. As soon as the sun came up, he grabbed my stuff and left. Hiked out. Didn't look back. Drove until the boss came back on my phone. I had a dozen missed calls. Eden had tried to reach him twice. When I told him what happened, he was quiet. Then he asked, "Quick trail?" I told him. He let out a long breath. I never cleared that one all the way. He said, "Didn't go more than halfway myself." He sold the cabin a few months later. Claimed it was too much to maintain. But I heard something in his voice. Something that said he'd seen something, too. Story ****. I grew up pressed between concrete walls and neon lights in Ironbridge. My childhood was the thrum of buses, shouting vendors, televisions leaking through apartment doors. Silence was never real there, it was just drowned-out noise. That's probably why the forest seemed like a cure. Out here, there was nothing but the crunch of boots on gravel, the low whistle of wind through pine crowns, the ache of steady climbs. For the first few days, the stillness felt like medicine. Then it started feeling like something else, like being watched. The walk to the cabin began miles downhill from the ranger post, following a switchbacking trail that carved into the slope. I took it every day, and it became as fixed as muscle. Memory. An old oak split at the center like a giant scar, a fallen log sagging across a trickle of water, moss swallowing it whole, an old fire pit of stones blackened by fires long dead. They were my waypoints, small things, but steady enough that the trail felt more like a hallway I already knew by heart, until one evening when the hallway stretched. I'd clocked out at dusk Wednesday. August 8th, tucking my logbook into the top flap of my pack. Same as always, the forest that night was unnervingly still. Even insects seemed to have paused. I walked. Left boot. Right boot. Steady rhythm. But when I glanced at my watch, a knees spread cold across my ribs. 30 minutes. It always took. Me 20. The trail was the same, the split oak, the creek log, the fire pit, but the end never came. My legs burned as if I'd been walking far longer than I should have. When the cabin finally appeared, nestled against the slope, I almost collapsed with relief. But the sight of it drained that relief in an instant. Something was wrong. I had helped nail the planks, had seen them flush and neat 2 weeks earlier. Now the porch steps slanted crookedly, boards cut uneven, nails jutting sharp and rust-ringed, like someone else had rebuilt it in a hurry. Careless with the details, I stepped inside, tossed my pack on the table and froze. The logbook dotted wasn't there. My stomach dropped. I emptied every pocket, turned the bag inside out. Gone. When I looked up, I found it already sitting on the shelf against the wall, perfectly closed. one pine needle resting across the cover like a signature. The door shut behind me with a heavy thud. I don't even remember closing it. I picked up the book and felt the hairs on my arms rise. The handwriting inside was my own, but not right. Angles wrong. Loops malformed. Like a child trying to copy. The entry matched my walk almost word for word except the times were off. It claimed I left the station at 6 o'clock. I hadn't left until nearly 7 o'clock. It even noted a stop by. The split oak. I never stopped. I slammed it shut and locked the cabin door, a habit I'd never bothered with before. That night, silence thickened round me. Midnight crept past. Then came the not.1 strike. Solid, deliberate, not frantic, not polite, just. There, minutes later, another, the same measured force. Then, after another pause, a third, perfectly spaced, like a metronome. Whoever it was didn't want in. They only wanted me to know they stood there. I clutched the hatchet from my bedside table, heart pounding, and pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing but the porch fading into black trees. I yanked the door open. Blade raised, no movement. No crunch of footsteps fleeing into the brush. The porch boards were clean. No prints. No scuffs. As if no one had knocked it all. I dragged the table in front of the door and sat awake with the axe across my lap. Every creak in the wall sounded like breath. Every groan in the beams made me flinch. When dawn finally leaked in grey and pale, I pushed the barricade aside. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Big, bare, human, pressed deep into the dirt right at my threshold. They lingered in one place, unmoving, as though someone had stood there for hours, and then, after a dozen steps, they simply stopped. No trail into the woods, no turn, just gone. I didn't bother looking for explanations. I didn't question the bent porch, the mimic handwriting, the trail that stretched when it shouldn't. I slung on my pack, locked the cabin out of reflex, and walked fast, boots striking, louder with each step. By the time I reached the ranger station, I'd already decided I wouldn't return. The forest didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied, and somewhere out there, something knew my rhythm well enough to walk it with. Me, story *3***. I was working a temporary forestry job in one of the lonelier stretches of the Appalachian backcountry. Most shifts were uneventful, removing dead branches from trails, checking that campers hadn't left smoldering fires, jotting down wildlife sightings in my little logbook. Repetitive, but I liked the routine. It kept my mind quiet. One evening I finished earlier than expected. My legs ached, and the thought of trudging the long gravel service road back to my truck felt unbearable. I knew of a forgotten fire line that cut through the ridge, an old path used before my time. I'd taken it once before. It wasn't on any of the new maps, just a thin scar through the pines, padded with needles, and half swallowed by moss. It would shave off a chunk of the walk, and all I wanted was coffee and rest. At first, the shortcut was familiar. My boots sank into damp earth, crunching twigs, brushing past ferns. I recognized little landmarks, a snag that bent like a crooked arm, a stream that slithered across the dirt, a pile of rocks stacked like uneven steps. Nothing unusual. Then my stride faltered. Ahead, maybe 30 feet off the path, was a structure. A cabin. Not the collapsing kind you sometimes find out here. This one looked intact, its log walls grey with age but sturdy. A roof patched with tin sheets, a porch that sagged slightly on one side. It had weight to it, like it belonged there. Except DID in single quotes T. I knew this route. There had never been a cabin here. Not last season. Not the season before. The ground round it was untouched. No footprints, no tire marks, not even broken weeds, just stillness. I stood there a long moment, gripping the straps of my pack. Then told myself I'd keep walking and report it later. That was the sensible thing. But 10 minutes down the trail, there it was again. The same cabin, same warped roof, same drooping porch beam, same grimy window. Like the trail had folded in on itself and brought me back where I started. My chest tightened. The path wasn't a loop, it ran almost straight to the service road. I tried to reason it out. Maybe to cabins, built years apart but eerily similar. Maybe fatigue was scrambling my head. But the excuses felt hollow. I crouched low and peered through a window. Inside was a bare wooden table with a single ceramic mug placed dead center. No blankets, no tools, no trash, nothing. Just that mug. Something about the emptiness snorted me. I hurried back onto the trail, boots pounding harder, faster. The sound of my steps echoed too loud in the silence. I locked my eyes on the dirt, on the line of the trail ahead, as if speed alone could push me free. And then, at a clearing, it happened again. The cabin, same sagging porch, same tin roof. Only now there was something different. A pale birch branch, leaning against the door frame, the exact stake I had noticed earlier on the trail and kicked aside. My stomach dropped. My hands went clammy on my jacket drawstrings. The cabin wasn't just repeating, it was shifting, carrying little pieces of the trail with it. Against every instinct, I climbed onto the porch. My boots groaned against the boards. The door creaked open with surprising